Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Leadership in Politics with Dr. Abraham. Today I have a special guest, exceptional in her own rights, Dr. Wendy Ulrich. She will share with us her insights, her books, her contributions to the science of psychology and leadership. Dr. Wendy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Abraham. Very glad to be here.
Of course, it's an honor to have you. I've known you before even meeting you. We had a meeting with Dr. Dave, and he spoke so highly of you and your achievements and what you contributed to the science. It was incumbent on me to have you on to share your insights with our audience. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Wendy Ulrich?
That is a good question. I'm supposed to be the one asking other people that question, not getting asked that question. So, I've had an interesting life. I started out with the assumption in my life that I would raise a family. I would be a stay-at-home mom, and that is what I intended to do. And that was my goal. And of course, I'm old enough that wasn't too unusual in the time that I grew up in. But I also had a lot of wonderful mentors. A grandmother who was a graduate of University of California at Berkeley, which was pretty uncommon. She was married to a man with an 8th grade education, and she was the Republican, he was the Democrat. Their religions were different, their educational backgrounds were different, and so they didn't, on the surface, have a lot in common. But I learned certainly from both of my grandmothers and from my mother that women can do remarkable things. My other grandmother was a widow when she was pregnant with her 4th child after 6 years of marriage, and she was left to provide for that little family, which she did remarkably well. So I think those two women in particular had a great impact on my life. But as I got a little on with life and with raising children, I began to realize that there were other things I wanted to do. So got an MBA from UCLA and then a PhD in psychology and education from the University of Michigan, and was in private practice as a psychologist in Michigan for probably close to 20 years.
So you had your own practice. What kind of practice?
Mostly individual adults. Yeah, a little bit of family, a little bit of work with teenagers, and
so that helped
not much
you
else.
To know the dynamic of family lives, know the dynamics of individuals and teams.
I hope so.
How societies functions, and that helped you to go into becoming your own an author in your own rights. You have several books.
I do, and I started writing fairly late in life. My first book was published 12 years ago, so I didn't see myself as an author. When I was in school, I remember somebody telling me once, have you ever thought about being a writer? And I thought they'd lost their mind because I hated writing. It was very stressful for me. I didn't think I was very good at it, but I learned mostly I was too much of a perfectionist, I think, and
you probably wanted to write the perfect book, and then you...
Well, didn't want to write the perfect book, didn't even see that as an option, but I didn't really know how to organize writing very well. And being married to my husband, who's terrific at that, was very helpful in just kind of learning, as I watched what he did, realizing, okay, I can figure this out, I can get someplace with this. And so we have very different writing styles, but I think we learn from each other. And
you complement each other. I kind of, as you know, I interviewed him a while back, and he was talking. He made us love you and fall in love with what you do, with the passion you presented to us, and he was genuine and sincere. And I told him actually, behind all that he achieved, what he achieved, there was somebody behind. There's behind every great man is a woman, And it's kudos to you, to your contributions to his success as well, and you compliment David.
Well, I think he certainly compliments me as well. I have learned so much from watching how he does things. I don't think it would have ever occurred to me to go after a PhD in anything. But as I watched him do it, I thought, oh, okay.
I understand you have 4 years together of life.
Yes. Yeah.
4 years. So
Yeah,
that's
it's been a
a
long
journey
time.
really that you
Actually, 45. So
45 years, and then be a powerful force to impact the life of others. It's not like you just improved on a personal level, but along the way, you were providing insights and guidance to others. You were mentors to many, either you and him. So your books, they deal with spirituality, religion,
yes, yes,
religion. Well,
yes.
how come you took that route? Not that. I mean, although spirituality is needed, but what took you toward the? Would I say religious or spiritual? What do you think?
Either one.
So either way. So what took you toward that one? I know faith is a powerful force behind you as an individual and your compassion toward others. Is that
But
what took you there?
yeah, I think that's certainly true. I started looking. I got an MBA first of all because I was interested in human behavior. It fascinated me. One of my early mentors was Steve Covey,
Steve Covey.
and always interested in how he saw the world. I had many good conversations with Steve, both about organizations and about religion. And so he was certainly an influence in my life. But I began to realize early that, unlike Dave, my passion was not really with the organizational aspect, but the personal. And so I went into psychology with that in mind, that I realized I really wanted to be more involved in just helping people figure out their own lives and find a different way of approaching life than maybe the ones they were stuck in. And
Yeah.
so that's where I started moving in that direction. But faith has always been a very important part of my personal journey. And I've been very grateful for some of the great psychologists who showed that psychology and religion are not at odds with each other. That in fact,
yeah, that's true.
people like Scott Richards and Alan Bergen, who really have made the way to show the value that religion and spirituality can have in people's lives, and that often healthy religion leads to healthy mental health as well. And
How,
that's been important
how
to
do you
me.
define healthy religion? What do you
Well,
mean by
I
healthy?
think there are certainly exceptions, where we see religion become sort of a fanatical part of people's lives, or people get into very extreme places. I learned, though, from one of my other early mentors in the field of psychology, who was not of my faith, but was a person of religious background. And he really believed strongly that religion was a stabilizing force, even in the lives of people who really struggled with life and who were not mentally healthy, that often people who came from difficult backgrounds or unstable families, or who were dealing with severe mental illness, even though sometimes religion kind of exacerbated, their delusional thinking or whatever it might be, that for the most part, the values, the communities of religious people could be a stabilizing and a positive force in people's
It is a
lives.
positive. You said it right. As long as you use it to the betterment of man and
Yeah.
humanity, religion is needed. As a matter of fact, I tell some of the leaders I consulted with, I tell them I tell in general, if there is no religion in society, create a religion and put it in society, because it gives the populace, it gives them a sense of belonging based on faith. And it's a stronger element to be connected through faith than in organizational norms and traditions.
I think that's true. We
Yeah,
all are looking for meaning in life.
meaning
Humans
in
are
life.
meaning-making machines. We create meaning, and we need meaning. We are not just wandering through the world like the deer in my front yard looking for the next thing to eat, but
Yes.
we are trying to understand what the purpose of life is, what we are about as human beings. We are, even if we don't find that in a belief in God per se, which many people do, but some do not. We need a guiding sort of life view that helps us decide what we want most, not just what we want now. That helps us figure out what's important to us and what we care about and how we want to treat each other in this world. And I think at its best, religion can often help us to do that. I worked with Chris Peterson, who was one of the founders with Marty Seligman of positive psychology. And as they were trying to figure out sort of the answer to that question, I don't really know what Chris's religious beliefs were, but I know from reading Marty Seligman's discussion of that he's an agnostic. He does not consider himself a religious man, but they went to the great religions of the world to try to figure out what does humankind value? What are the values that we hold that sort of pass the test of time and that show up again and again in many of the religious beliefs that people have? And that became the basis of their concept of signature strengths. What are the values laden strengths that we hold dear and that we believe that we are good at and that we want to be good at because they are things that we think make a difference for good in the world.
So make a difference in the life of others. So do you think that's our purpose in life, to be of service of others?
Well,
be better human beings?
You know, I mean, we can talk about what my personal beliefs are about that and sort of what the larger issue is. I do believe that is a huge vital purpose of what we are here to do. I learned a lesson about that from one of our daughters, actually. She was, I learn a lot from all of my kids. They are amazing people, but I really appreciate the ways that they think differently than I do sometimes and what I learned from that. Anyway, she was in her probably early 30s, I think, when this happened, maybe late 20s. I can't remember exactly now, maybe more like late 20s, but she was in a graduate program and a PhD program in sociology. She had her own home. She worked. She was, a very competent human being, but she was aware as she looked at some of her friends who were married that they seemed to be treated differently in her community than she was being treated. And she was curious about that.
She thought, person?
She was single, and she thought, this is kind of unusual. I work, I go to school, I'm in a doctoral program, I vote, I get myself to the dentist, but I'm not I'm not taken seriously quite the same way as some of my other friends are. And so she began to think about what makes it different. And she came to the conclusion, and I think it's an interesting one, that the job of adults is to help raise the next generation. And until you move into that role in some capacity or another, it doesn't necessarily mean to have children, but until you are helping to pass it along, to help raise the next generation, to help other people find their way in life, then you're a taker, not a giver, and you're seen as a child, in a sense, not an adult. That's the role of adults. So I thought that was a really interesting, helpful idea.
That's a good observation on her part. But was she living in a specific religious community that believed that way? Because
no, I don't know.
Is that the norms?
That was her conclusion as she looked at
society in general.
Yeah, of society in general, that is what makes you kind of move into a different sense of yourself and a different role. She decided at that point that she was going to qualify to do foster care for kids. And frankly, I'm the psychologist in the family. I thought she'd lost her mind. I mean, I told her in no uncertain terms, that's a really bad idea. You would be a single mom trying to raise a troubled child who has probably been taken out of their home or some kind of abuse, neglect. I just really thought, this is too much. This is not going to go well. But she, being the adult that she was, went ahead and did what she wanted and what she thought. And so she qualified for that. And she had several foster children, some for a short period, some for longer periods. And I saw not only the difference she made in their lives, but the difference that they made in her life.
In her life. She became the adult.
She became that adult. Yeah. And so everyone in our family, my other two children and my husband and I as well, started really thinking about that. How can we help raise the next generation? Another daughter of mine, she said, you know what, I'm going to look around. I know some people, some young women in my church community whose parents have never been to college. No one in their family has ever been to college. These are bright girls. They can succeed at this. And she took them under wing. She took them down to the local community college. She got them financial aid. She got them enrolled in school. She helped them through their first year. That was her way of helping raise the next generation.
That's a very valuable lesson to learn, and it brings a good spirit out of people.
It does.
The way they think about others, not only us. She could have said, I'm a single, I enjoy my life, I don't need to worry about others and raising those kids, neglected kids. You, as a mother, you said that to her out of concern, not because you don't want to help others. You said
right. Oh, absolutely. I just thought, this is going to be really complicated to try to do. I know what these kids, have been dealing with, and I just thought, as a single person with all the responsibilities she already had, this was going to be tough. But she proved me wrong. It was tough. It was tough. But she not only did it, but did it well.
She made it through. Your family is a beautiful family. I gathered the spiritual element you have of helping others and being a source of enlightenment to others. One in your books called Weakness is Not Sin. Why it's not a sin?
Well, I approached this from sort of an analysis of some of the scriptures in the Bible, some other holy writing that is important in my faith, and was trying to look at it from that angle. But really where this idea began to be important to me was when I was reading a book by a secular psychologist on forgiveness and on how we go about that process of forgiving. And she distinguished sort of things that people do that are things that we do to each other that are against our personal values, that are against our own ethical and moral beliefs, from things that we do because we're human, that we make mistakes, that we have limitations on our time and our energy and our perspective and our education, that when we're trying to forgive someone else, or when we're trying to forgive ourselves even, which is a common problem that we often have as well, it's important to distinguish between things that are really violations of our own moral and ethical code, or the moral and ethical code of the society that we live in,
yes.
Whatever it might be, and things that are just dumb stuff we do, and she said, when you just do dumb stuff, we just have to be patient with each other. We have to be more accepting of each other. This is not just, oh, you really hurt me, you really damaged me, and I will choose to forgive, as important as that is too. But this is, I didn't do that perfectly, and I need to let it go. You didn't do that perfectly, and I need to let it go. And I need to distinguish between something you did intentionally when you should have known better, to hurt me in some way, and things that you did because you didn't know better, or you didn't intend it, or it wasn't really that big of a deal. Somebody was rude to me at the bank the other day, and I got a little snippy because COVID is kind of doing that to all of us. We're all getting a little snippy, but I realized later, I need to go back and apologize to her. She was trying really hard to be nice.
So she was rude to you, and then you wanted back to apologize?
Well, I just felt like I wasn't living up to my own values in that situation. I mean, I wasn't horrible to her, but I was kind of acting like I was entitled to a little better service than I was getting, and I should be given a little more respect and helped a little more than this. And I thought, that was that. I don't need to be that way. This is a good lady just trying to do her job as best she can, and I can go back and say, I'm sorry. I wasn't very patient, and I wasn't very kind, and that's not really the way I want to live my life. So I hope you'll forgive me, but I don't think that's a sin. It's not living up to my best values, but it's a normal limitation. And I'm sure even if I didn't go back to apologize to her, she'd probably say, another irritable customer, but that's okay. People are irritable right now. But I think it'll probably feel better to her if I,
So probably you approach it as well. If God can forgive
yeah,
weaknesses,
yeah,
we can also forgive,
absolutely.
right? So we
Absolutely.
can forgive. It's okay. There are
We
more
do,
better things, more worse things in life to worry about than just not smiling at each other or
yeah,
not
yeah,
understanding each other.
yeah. We're
Powerful.
doing church by Zoom in our family right now because none of us, we're scattered all over the country and none of us can really go to church right now because you can't. But so we get on Zoom and we all take turns kind of sharing something that the little grandchildren might enjoy and talking to each other. And we watched a film this last week about a parable in which a man who owes billions of dollars, the equivalent of billions of dollars, goes and he's called to account for his debt. And he says, I can't pay it. And the person who he owes the money to says, all right, then, if this is an old story, take him and bind him and put him in prison and sell him as a slave and his children and his wife and everybody else. And he says, oh, please, don't, he's just, and he begs to be allowed more time. And the person you owe is forgiven. You don't have to pay me at all. I will forgive you the debt completely. And he's just, of course, intensely relieved. And then he goes out, finds somebody who owes him the equivalent of, a few $100, maybe a couple $1,000. And no, he doesn't pay it forward. He says, you owe me. You owe me this money. And if you won't pay, and when he can't pay it, he begs to be, given more time. And he says, no, take him off to prison until he can pay the debt. And the message of the story, the message of the story is we owe much more than we realize to the people around us, that we hurt intentionally and unintentionally. We take their sense of safety in the world. We take their self-esteem. We take things we don't even intend or know we're taking, right, left, and in between. And we have this notion that we go to God and ask him for his kindness and his patience.
Yeah, we go
and
back
his
right
mercy.
away and say, please forgive us.
Please forgive me. And
please heal us, but we don't pay that to the people we deal with.
And if
That's
we
just
don't
something
pay
else.
that forward, then we kind of end up in that boat.
Wow. Why do you think leaders don't admit vulnerability?
Well, nobody wants to be vulnerable. I mean, the word vulnerable means by sort of definition that you are in a place where you it's going to be easy for someone to hurt you. It's going to be easy for someone to take advantage of you. That's what it means to be vulnerable.
Look weak. You look weak in their eyes.
Yeah. And we think if we I think the word that we're probably really after here is just emotional honesty. A lot of us think that it makes us look vulnerable or weak if we are simply real and human and honest. If we're willing to accept that someone else has a different viewpoint than our own, or that there might be a legitimate reason why someone acted the way they did, even though it was not in our personal best interest that they do that. So I think this idea that to be honest, to be human, to be real makes us vulnerable. Maybe sometimes it does, but most of the time, the leaders who are successful in this world are not only clear about what they expect and clear about their personal boundaries and what they want from their employees, but they are also kind. They are also willing to be open, willing to be more transparent, perhaps, than just I'm right, my way or the highway. Those leaders can be very successful at times, but the companies that they create, but despite being enormously successful at times, are often places that people might struggle to work and to feel comfortable.
Do they need religion in their lives to reach this level of understanding of others? Or what do they need? What level have they reached?
Well, that's a very good question. And we can look at, a lot of things that can create that kind of self-awareness in people. I think religion does that for a lot of people, a deeper level of just focus on what is the purpose of life, what do I think my life is about, and not just buying the assumption that life is about how rich you can get, how much money you can make, how much power you can have, how many accolades you can receive. There are people for whom that's what it's about. And there are also people who are harsh, even hard, who really do have a deep sense of trying to do good in the world, wanting to make a difference. I know leaders, I can think of several, who are seen by their employees as tough to work for, difficult people, but underneath that, they stick with it because they believe that the company itself is making a difference for good, is accomplishing something that will help humanity at large. And sometimes those leaders, despite being hard on some of the people they work for or work with, are actually quite concerned about poverty, or about the earth, or about things that, medical difficulties, and they're trying very hard to find their way to those things.
Probably they were hurt too. They were hurt as well along the way, not to trust these individuals that they deal with. Although that's not something we recommend. We recommend for them to be empathetic all the way, caring all the way. They cannot be harsh to others while trying to have a different purpose or serve a different purpose. Our recommendations is to be consistent all the way.
Yeah, consistency is hard. I'm not very good at consistency. I keep trying, but we are different at different times. When we are, under pressure, we don't act the same way as we do when things are going well.
Yes.
C.S. Lewis used to say, that's an excuse. Who you are when you're under pressure really tells who you really are. When you
make someone angry to see who they are. Make them angry first.
Yeah, but I certainly don't want to be judged by my worst moments. I'm hoping that there's more to me than just how I am in my worst state.
Your faith should ground you, because you seem and you've taught others to be spiritual and emotionally intelligent. In the secular world, we took what's in religion and we put it in a secular understanding where you become emotionally intelligent, and you'll have self-awareness, empathy, communications with others. So you bring the element that what religion teaches, and we gave it a different label, different meaning, different understanding. So others who are not religious can use the same concepts that you use in religion. So you are definitely an emotionally intelligent person. Now, if we go from religion to spirituality, why is spirituality in general? They don't have to be religious. They could be faith-based, but they appreciate the faith they want, the religion they want, the culture they want. But when they deal with others, do you think spirituality in general plays a part in creating this person with understanding of others, versus someone who has doesn't believe in spirituality or doesn't live it?
Well, I guess it depends on how we define these words. To me,
what's a spirituality to you?
Yeah, spirituality to me is a sense that it is an effort to define my own values, to think seriously about how I want to live in the world, to find my own moral and ethical code. It is an effort to develop some of those, what we think of as spiritual skills. Some people are looking at meditation as a spiritual skill, to look at gratitude as a spiritual skill, to look at caring for others at love and hope and optimism as spiritual skills, at peace as a spiritual skill. So, when we are trying to define, not necessarily do I believe in God or not as a source of those things, but just in my life, how do I answer the question, what's the meaning of my life? What's the purpose of my life going to be?
As a human being.
As a human being. I love Viktor Frankl's classic work on man's search for meaning. And one of the things he says, and I won't get the quote exactly right, but he says, it's not up to us to ask life, what's the meaning of life? It's up to us to realize that life asks us, what will be the meaning of your life? You have to decide.
Because we are visitors.
And because we are meaning makers, we create at some level the meaning that our lives will have.
Yes.
We don't get to just, shake our fists at the unfairness of life. We take whatever that unfairness is that we've experienced and we say, okay, so who will I be in the face of this, in the face of the most difficult moments of my life, in the face of uncertainty, in the face of failure, in the face of loss and disappointment and sin, if you want to, not living my own values even. What will I do next? What will I
That doesn't
choose?
happen overnight. Doesn't
No.
happen overnight. How
No.
do you reach it? How do you tell leaders out there to reach this level without attaching to a religion?
I think
Specifically.
we ask each other, what do you value? What is important to you? What's been a time in your life when you really felt like,
Somebody will say, I want to make more money.
okay, then why? What do you want to do with it?
I want to be
How's
the
that?
richest there is.
Okay, and
So
then
what
what
do you do with them?
happens? Then what's that going to do
So
for
you continue leading them all the way until you reach a
Well,
common ground?
and some people that is going to be the meaning of their life. I'm going to beat everybody. I'm going to be the most powerful rich person in the world. Okay, that I mean, if that truly is their thoughtful, feeling about who they want to be, they have the agency, they have the choice, the freedom to make that choice. My sense is, where did you figure out that was what you wanted? Most people don't really want to just be rich. They want to be happy. That's usually what underlies our beliefs and our desires. I want to be happy, and I think having a lot of money is going to make me happy. Okay, what are you going to do with all that money? Well, however we define it, it's going to make me. What do I think it is? For me, happiness, my moments of deepest happiness come in interactions with other human beings, in interactions with the beauty of this earth, in interactions with my own deepest values, and being able to live out my strengths in a way that I think might help someone else. Those are the meaningful and happy moments of my life. Now, yeah, I can feel a moment of deep happiness eating a good piece of chocolate or, a roasted marshmallow, but it's not usually
the
momentary.
Right.
It's not usually the momentary pleasure that we're talking about here. It's what really gives you a sense that I like who I am. I feel good about how I'm responding to the challenges of my life. I feel good about how I'm taking on the opportunities that I've been, surrounded by. I'm making a difference in things that matter to me. Is usually what really makes us happy. Is
you have
relationships
a long time to go, and you're giving others and you're contributing to society. But what do you want to be remembered as? When somebody says, Wendy Ulrich, author or a human being, what's your legacy you want to leave behind?
That's one of those Steve Covey-esque questions that I've never been able to really come up with a great answer to. I don't really think about it very much in terms of what do I want other people to remember about me. I just don't. I assume the people I will have the most impact on will be the immediate members of my family and my closest friends. I hope that they feel that I genuinely cared about them, that they learned some things from me that made their lives a little better, that they knew that they were valued by me and loved by me, and that I was deeply grateful for their existence on the planet. I hope they have some of those kinds of feelings about me that I have about my grandmothers and the legacy that they left me of resilience and hard work.
When you talked about your daughter and her observing others, and she wanted to be an adult, and then she goes and commit to that mission, that didn't come from nowhere. That came from you and Dave. That came from you. And
I hope we had some influence.
No, without a doubt, you had influence on that.
Yeah.
You definitely do have influence on their kids. Peer group, sure. Society, sure. But home is where most of the influence comes from. Faith also connected to that. So you wrote a book with Dave together.
Yeah. Yeah, the why of work, which
Why
is
of work.
basically how do we find meaning in work? You know, how do
So
we
the
find
same thing.
meaning? How do we help others find
How
meaning in
help
work?
others. So your mission really is, and legacy is the message you're advocating here and trying to convey is help others. Continue
Yeah,
helping others because this is where happiness lie really is behind everything we do. Helping others and being an instrument of help to another human being is really what matters. Tell me about you compliment Dave, but how is it living with him?
uh, Dave is, well, it's fascinating living with him. We are very different in many ways. I stay up late. He goes to bed early. He gets up early. I struggle. You know, he needs about half as much sleep as I do. Um, Dave is hard driving. He is a hard worker. I have never known anybody who puts in more hours, more time, who is more productive. But on the other hand, I learned very early, part of the reason I decided to go to graduate school, part of the reason, the biggest reason was it was something I decided I deeply wanted. But there was a small part in the back of my mind, which was Dave will be absolutely 100% supportive of anything I
Behind
choose
you.
to do. And if he's going to get to know his children, I need to be gone some because,
Let me put you on
because,
hold here. Let me put you on
yeah,
hold for a second. This concept is a beautiful concept. So you took that concept from, or probably they borrowed that from you. Normally, leaders, a CEO, to give a chance to the president to shine, he delegates authority and he hides away. Anything you
mhm.
want, talk to the president. So here, you took, you helped him along the way, and you've been there for him. He achieved what he achieved. You raised the kids, and your time come for you to achieve your things. You said, this is your time to learn and get to know your kids.
Yeah, and I should be clear.
To be clear.
When I went to into my master's program at UCLA, we had one child and one on the way, and he had to take over in the
Beautiful.
childcare. This was not just when we were all done. You know, we did this while we had
This is why you're doing it.
one and one. And then when I went into the PhD program, he was a new professor at the University of Michigan with a big load and a big responsibility. I had another child in the end of my first year of graduate school. That was a really odd timing. You know, I literally in the middle of finals week gave birth to a almost 13-pound child, you know. and yet during that process, all during the whole process, both of us took a back seat in some ways to each other's careers and to each other's training. But we also realized we were going to have to not be as exceptional as maybe we would be otherwise, because we were going to support each other, you
We
know.
have to support each other
And
for the
and Dave
betterment of
was,
all.
yeah, Dave was phenomenal at that. He put in much time on the changing diapers and emptying dishwashers and going to the grocery store and playing with kids and taking them on one-on-one vacations with him, taking them to work with him, doing things to give me a break and to support
Yeah,
me in the
and
work that I
I
was
felt
doing.
his love to his family and to you, and the way he talked about you just made it so beautiful to hear. So
Well,
congratulations to both of you.
he's a good man.
Yeah, he is a good man, and you're a good person, of course. Congratulations to both of you. What's your latest book, or
Um,
are you writing anything new?
I'm not really working on anything right now. I've been thinking about doing something on this whole concept of uncertainty and how do we know when to quit, when to stick with something and when to let it go. How do we deal with the uncertainties of our lives around things like that? You know, when we're all kind of wired to want as much clarity about things as we can, and most of us, when we feel uncertainty about things, it's kind of perceived by the brain that is the lowest part of our brain as a threat. You know, the part that's always scanning for predators
You
and
always see it.
problems. You know,
It's
yeah.
always there. Right? The
And
threat
right
is always
now,
there.
it's an uncertain time. I think the world in general is almost always an uncertain time, but much of the time we can kind of hide ourselves from that uncertainty.
It's immediate,
And
indirect,
and right now
there.
it's in our face, and it's making everything else we do feel more uncertain
How do you
as well.
overcome it, or how are you overcoming this?
I don't know that you overcome uncertainty.
What
Dave
do
and
you
I have
do?
talked about this a lot, and the word we both come up with is you harness it. Uncertainty
Harness uncertainty.
is not just a thing we get rid of. It would be a pretty boring life if everything were exactly the same every day and we knew exactly what was going to happen and everything were predictable. I see life well, I remember years ago hearing somebody talk about what's the nature of life. You know, we often see life like Sisyphus pushing this rock up the mountains, and he gets the rock up the mountain and then it rolls back down again. And he pushes it up and it rolls back down. And that this is sort of the definition of a meaningless life, you know, that you keep pushing this thing up and it keeps rolling back down. She said, but what if we saw Sisyphus a little differently? What if Sisyphus was a bodybuilder?
So his
And that
exercise.
changes the paradigm, doesn't it? You know, suddenly pushing that rock up the mountain is not a useless waste
No,
of
it's good
time.
exercise for
It's
him.
how he gets stronger. And I see lots of what we're doing in life in those terms. You know, maybe it's not just I keep trying and bad things keep happening, or I'm a good person and you know something. Why did I lose my wife, or why did I get this disease? Sometimes I think if we can see it as I have certain things about me that I want to get better at. I want to be a kinder person, or I want to be more patient, or I want to, you know, be smarter, whatever it is. We don't get that by predictability. We get that through uncertainty. The world moves forward when we don't know what the answer is to the question, when we don't know how things are going to turn out. And that's one way to see that is that's the rock. You know, when we push that rock up the hill, we get stronger in living our own values.
So
and
seeing
in our
the
own character.
positivity of things, being an optimist.
Well, I don't know if it's even being an optimist as much as it is.
What is it? You
Positivity
have to see,
is
you see the light of at the end of the tunnel. It's a driving force.
it's seeing the possibility.
Possibilities, but it has to
It
be
may
good
not.
possibilities.
Yeah, seeing the possibility that something could be better, seeing the possibility that something could be meaningful, that something could actually teach us something of worth, even if it's a hard lesson. One of the things I often do when I'm doing training, including with big business leaders, you know, I'll say, what's something that's really been hard for you?
Yeah.
And I don't ask them to tell me what it is if I'm in a classroom setting especially, but, you know, just think about that thing for a minute, what that felt like when you just failed miserably, or you lost something really important to you, or you messed up in a big way, you know, something that was just really painful. And then I ask them, would you just tell me in a few words, what did you learn from that that's made you a better person? Or what did you do in response to that situation that you feel best about in how you handled it? And the kinds of things that people say, these are often the very most significant learning moments of our lives. We may not have even thought about it in those terms, but when you see the kind of what I would even say sort of a reverent way that people respond to that question, it's like, oh, yeah, I learned to keep trying when things are hard, or I learned that other people can help you, or I learned to be honest about my mistakes, or there are these beautiful life lessons that come out of those very hard things. And that's when I say, yeah, you got the rock to the mountaintop and you got stronger in the process.
So in time of uncertainties, be honest, be transparent, open communication. And
be empathic with other people who are dealing with this just like you are, you know, and are struggling like you are. And it's not all about you and what you need and what you want. And, you know, we're in this together. Can we be patient and helpful to each other?
And always be, you see something, okay, do not give up and think what you can do better.
But can
we
I
may
do
call
better?
it optimism. You know, the others may not see it as well, but there's always see the possibilities of things out there.
Yeah, and when there is there's another quote I remember well from Václav Havel, who was the first president of the Czech Republic. He was also the last president of Czechoslovakia. He made that transition. He was a playwright, actually, so had this artistic sense, not the kind of person we normally see running a country. But when he was interviewed, the statement, as I remember him saying it, although it's in translation and it gets translated differently, was, hope is not a prognosis about how things are going to turn out. It is different from optimism. Hope means that you decide that the work is worth doing for its own sake because it's the right thing to do, no matter how it turns out.
No matter what the outcome is.
And that's a powerful statement to me,
Yes, it is.
to see him say it was the right thing to establish this country, to work for the freedom of humankind, to work for a level of democracy and human rights. It was the right thing to do, regardless of how it turns out. And that's the hope that is, that he talked about, was doing the thing that you believe to be the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And if it works out great and you hope it will, that's wonderful. And if it doesn't work out, you still know you did what mattered to you and you did it for the right reasons. And that's a really provocative
This is an awakening call, though.
definition of
Very
hope
good,
for me.
very good.
Yeah.
What's your message to female leaders out there, women empowerment? I know you have led the way in that regards as well. What's your message to them?
Oh, it's a complicated world, and it is such a personal thing. People often ask me, boy, how did you do this? How did you have 3 kids and get through a doctoral program and, work and all these things? And I'm like, we muddled through. I don't know how we did it. We took it a day at a time, a week at a time, a semester at a time. Sometimes we got other people to help us. We tried to help them. We had some good friends when we were doing our schooling together. They had 3 kids at the time, and I had 2. So they all looked alike. They were all little blonde-haired, blue-eyed children. And so I would take them. We'd get together at the beginning of every semester and we'd figure out what our classes were and who's going to watch the kids when, and we'd all take turns. So I'd be going to the grocery store with these 5 little kids under the age of 6, and people would look at me like, this is, nobody does that. What are you doing? Because they assumed they were all ours, but they weren't. We helped each other. We did it together. We kept trying when things were hard. We didn't do as well on things as we wish we had sometimes. There were a lot of things I didn't do that other people did. And I just was like, I can't do it all.
You have to prioritize what's important.
Yeah. So it's not easy. And I think women today have a little easier time breaking out of the mold. They have more freedom to choose what kinds of things might be available to them. But there are always consequences for the choices we make, whatever they are. I think it's easier for women today to make some of those choices. But when I talk to high-level women leaders, I'm still hearing all the time from the women more than from the men, I'm worried about my kids. And that's inevitable.
I'm worried about my kids.
My kids, yeah. I'm worried I'm not doing... So
we go back to the same message.
We do.
How to raise them better.
How to raise them better. And I'm not trying to discourage people from asking that question.
That's a good question, actually.
I wish men were, sometimes I wish more of the men were asking the question as well, although I'm hearing this question more from men too. Children can thrive in a lot of different circumstances, but we do need to be asking the question, who's raising the next generation?
You need to be aware of who's raising the next generation. Yeah. And are they going to follow the same value that we have, or they'll be...
Or at least figure out their own, at least figure out.
Their own has to align with values of society that you believe in. Otherwise, why would we have them?
Right. We want them to be contributing, strong, capable people who are doing good in the world. All 3 of my children have PhDs. All 3 of my children have children, and they are all managing that differently. In one of my children's homes, there's a stay-at-home mom and a working dad, and that's a very traditional kind of setup.
So in another family of doctors, family of PhDs.
Yep.
And each one of you and they've contributed and still are contributing, but each one of them, your kids.
They do. Yes.
They
all have children, and they're all doing it differently. They have kids, but
they're all also contributing to society and serving others in their own fields.
And some of them are doing it in very traditional, family arrangements. Some of them are, getting an outside person to help them with young children, which is great. Some of them are, one of them, she works part-time, her husband works part-time. They each have different arrangements of how they're making this work. And that's why I say, don't look at anybody else. Just you figure it out together. You know, you figure it out with the people, with the person who's helping you raise these children. And if you don't have children of your own, okay, what are you going to do to contribute to the world and to the making the world a better place?
What's your message to your kids, to the achieved kids? What's your message to them? And from them to each parent out there and each child listening, what's your message?
I think my message is take life seriously. You only get one shot at it. So take the time to ponder, to think about what you want it to mean, what you want it to be, because you're the ultimate, you know, decision maker on that. I think even when we believe in God, which I certainly do, I believe that's what God is doing for us as well. He is trying to raise the next generation, if you will.
He helps you by raising the next generation, or guide you through it.
Yeah, and we're his next generation in a way. You know, I think that this is a universal principle, whether or not we believe in God, that we find our ultimate meaning and happiness in life when we are doing something that contributes to making the world a better place.
This is a fascinating approach. Hopefully one of these days we'll have another chance to talk about religion in general, which it's a fascinating topic, spirituality as well.
Yeah.
I hope we'll have the opportunity to do that. And your message to Dave?
My message to Dave, Dave is, Dave, here's my message to him on a daily basis on all the little ins and outs of lives. We are truly good friends, and we love talking to each other. We have enough different about how we approach the world to push each other, and we have enough alike to find common ground, and I am very, very grateful for both of those things. He has been an enormous, I mean, of all the people who have influenced my life, my grandmothers, my parents, my children, Dave has been the biggest influence on this earth of anyone in my life.
That's beautiful. And through your contributions, through your writing, both of you made us love you, made us love your work and what you do.
You're kind, Abraham.
I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to add? Anything?
Life is beautiful. It is a beautiful gift. My daughter was in a situation once where she was just under a lot of stress, and she learned to say, all I have to do right now is the next step, over and over and over again. And that's a really helpful lesson when we're under stress. But I began to realize a year or so ago, maybe it was just a few months ago, no, I don't want to just spend my life saying, all I have to do right now is get this next thing done. I want to spend my life saying, what I get to do right now
That's the moment.
is I get to go to the dentist because I have a dentist and I can afford the dentist. What I get to do right now is go for a walk because I have legs that will take me there and it's a beautiful day. What I get to do right now is walk in the rain because when it's raining, yeah, I'm going to get wet, but I can put my clothes in the dryer when I get home. That's wonderful.
Isn't it amazing how we took things for granted?
Yeah.
We took things for granted. Now we wish we can meet others.
Yeah.
If it rains, we're going to go outside and celebrate. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So even now, in the midst of these challenging times, I get to do a lot of wonderful things. And and I get to live the values that I hold. I get to try to be a part of the solution, not just part of the problem. This is
the message out there, everyone. Be part of the solution. The problem will always be there.
The problems will always be there. They will always be there. But there is time in this right now, for me at least, to stop and think, to slow down, to pay attention, to not just run to the next thing on my to-do list, but to stop and ponder what really matters.
Time to think. And with that, I thank you for your time.
It's been a joy.
Thank you for the insight. I enjoyed this conversation. Very beautiful.
Thank you for your wonderful insights and questions as well. Thank you for what you're doing to make the world a better place.
Thank you so much.